Hey, we are two Star Wars nerds, and today we're going to be talking about how young Anakin is actually a really great character.
Yep.
And I know when we just watched The Phantom Menace, we were thinking about all the controversy around Anakin Skywalker as a little kid. And you know what? Obviously, The Phantom Menace came out when we were kids, so we have some kind of nostalgic connection to it.
Right.
But I think beyond that, the older we get, we actually appreciate young Anakin more. And so really, for a frame of context, before we even start this, we have to understand that the prequel trilogy is just that. It's prequels to the OT, and it's really giving us the beginning of Anakin. And I mean, you even talked about how it humanized Darth Vader for you a little more. So like, how did that connect rewatching Phantom Menace?
I mean, originally when I watched Return of the Jedi as a kid, I always at the end did feel bad for Darth Vader. I'm like, oh man, like, you know, I just felt like in that moment he regretted everything that he did and he wanted to have that relationship with his father. So I did always have that, I guess, that revelation that that he had always been good from the beginning, but I didn't see that and I didn't know the full story. So then when Phantom Menace came out and I saw him as a little boy, he's an adorable little boy, and how sweet and pure and innocent it is. Now every time I watch Return of the Jedi and Luke takes that helmet off, that's what I think of. That's what I see. I'm like, that's Anakin. Like, that's who Anakin really is.
Yeah, and what made it really interesting for me as well is just revisiting the idea of the Chosen One and M-Count and midichlorians and the Force, and this thread that's in there. Really, you could almost call it like a savior type, a messianic type. You know, obviously Anakin being born without a father. You know, there's a virgin birth, obviously very paralleled to Christian. I guess Christian theology and Jesus. But then that's pretty much where the connection stops. Yeah. After that, it's totally, completely different. But this idea that George Lucas put in there of Anakin really being the one to bring balance, and even things like he had dreams of freeing slaves.
Right. And
you even brought up when we were talking about this, how even in the middle of slavery, you see Anakin's purity. Yeah. And you know,
he's joyful, he has friends, like he's a normal little boy, but he's so sweet. Like, just thinking about his life circumstances, that he's a slave, that him and his mom are slaves, really, and to see that he can still find friends, he can still find joy, he finds hobbies that he enjoys. You still see he's a little kid, and he finds that joy, that childlike joy that is really a beautiful thing.
Yeah. And you know, it made it even harder knowing that he is a slave, but he has dreams of freeing slaves. But he still has joy in the middle of that. And for me, young Anakin is a good character because it makes 2 and 3 harder to watch.
Yeah, it does.
When I watch Attack of the Clones and I'm like, okay, he had an attachment to his mom already. And so then when episode 2 rolls around, he's pulled away from his mom.
Right.
And then when episode 3 comes, you're like, okay, he never had a father and he viewed Obi as a father. And to see the heartbreak and to see how Palpatine was treating him and grooming him and manipulating him. And then when you see him in episodes 4 through 6 in the OT, it's like, man, I keep going back to that little boy. I'm like, man, everything is totally different.
Right.
And then, but what became really interesting to me is he's pursuing Luke. And even though Anakin is now Vader, and he's like, I want my son to be with me. I want my son on the dark side. But then you even see the struggle of, you know, at times like he kills Obi-Wan, and then he's like, he killed the one who he thought of it as his father, and he gets his revenge. And then he even is like threatening his daughter, doesn't know it's his daughter at the time, but you see this stuff where it's like, man, this is like really difficult to watch. It's not just a baddie, it's not just a villain.
Right.
I think young Anakin really humanizes Darth Vader, especially like you mentioned in Return of the Jedi.
I know for me too, as a kid, I've never liked the bad guys, but I did always think Darth Vader was such a cool bad guy. I'm like, the mask, just the way he looked, you know, the little bit of the backstory that we got, but then seeing the humanity of Anakin in the prequels, it makes him more of a man, like we said, and you can kind of feel for him. Like, obviously it doesn't excuse the terrible things he did, like, I'm not saying that, but you're like, he's just a broken man who didn't have a father, was raised as a slave, viewed Obi-Wan as a father, and Obi-Wan viewed him as a son, so just this...
As a brother.
As a brother. So just this hard place to be in life, and just his mom dying and all this stuff. It's just, it brings it full circle, and you get to see who he really truly is in the beginning, and then you see him revert back to that in Return of the Jedi, and I think it's beautiful.
Yeah, and I think when we were talking about this, we were discussing the question, is the criticism of young Anakin Skywalker valid? And to me, it isn't. Because I'm thinking, you see this kid who's dreaming of going off-world, like he's heard of Jedi Knights, and he's so excited. He just keeps yelling, yippee, and he's so happy, and
so
like,
cute.
he's so excited.
Right.
And I think really it's this act one of his life where it's like he's been enslaved, and then he gets a chance at freedom, and then basically the torment that he has in that freedom literally brings him back to slavery under Palpatine.
Yep, he's never really free.
And I think it is just like George Lucas says, it's like poetry, it rhymes, that funny quote, but it's really cool because I think young Anakin isn't an amazing character, but I think he's a great character. And I think the criticism that was brought there, I don't think it's really fair. I think this is actually a great way to set up Darth Vader and to return back to something cool. So if you haven't already, I would encourage you to hit that red subscribe button because we have giveaways at every single one of our sub goals. Also, we just launched our Teespring store, so we have merch that we're selling as well, and we just hope to make really cool nerdy merch that you would love to wear out in public. And with that, we are two Star Wars nerds, and may the Force be with you always.